50 competitors met at the beach of La Palme in south of France to determine once and for all who is the fastest windsurfer on the planet. I joined the event and it turned out to be wild. A speed surfing event. Let me quickly explain to you where we're at and the format before we jump into the video so you guys know what's going on. For a few years now, Principe Andrea Baldini is hosting the World Speed as one of the fastest and also most reliable spots for speed surfing in the whole of Europe. For this competition we had a period of 10 days to give us a chance to catch some of the renowned Tramontana wind that provides the south of France with a lot of strong wind days throughout the year. A speed surfing competition is run in full fleet heats. So within 1 hour of time, within an extension 1.5 hours of time, you can surf over the course as often as you like. The average speed between your two fastest runs will count towards your ranking for this heat. For each heat you get a score. So the person with the fastest average gets 0.7 points in first place, the second fastest gets second place and 2 points, and so on. It basically works the same like in a slalom competition. After 4 heats, you can discard your worst heat and worst result. The course itself has a length of 500 meters and is marked by 2 big yellow buoys. Additionally, around 200 meters in front of the course, there's another small little yellow buoy. And between this buoy and the first buoy that starts the 500 meters, there's a zone that's known as the one-man zone. Within this zone, always one person should be at a time. And this gives all the competitors a bit of space on the 500-meter run to have like some clear water and some clear wind to make good speed runs. As with 50 plus competitors on the course, it can get quite crowded and this zone kind of stretches out the fleet. At the end of the course, you're not allowed to stop right after the last buoy where the 500 meters ends, because obviously competitors are coming into the finish with 40, sometimes 45 plus knots, and it can get quite dangerous. So there's another buoy around 100 meters away from the finish of the 500 meters, and only after that buoy you're allowed to stop. So the whole course is more or less 800 meters, more than 500, because of these 2 additional zones. Up to this point we already ran 3 heats the 2 days before we had good wind. Today would be the last day of competition, as it would be the final day of strong wind. And an additional 2 heats were planned for the day. With the discard coming into play with the next heat, this had the potential to really shake up the rankings. At this moment I was sitting in 16th place and there was still a lot to play for, whereas at the top it was also super exciting because Antoine Albo, Matteo Iachino, Hans Kreisel and Vincent Falconer were fighting for the World Speed Championship title, and it was really close at the front. So let's get into the final day and see how the competition went from here. Good morning guys, from the 3rd day here at the World Speed Championship in south of France. We've had 2 really decent days, and I think I've never been as exhausted as I feel this morning in my life during a competition, because yesterday we did 2.5 hour heats, and doing heats instead of just free sailing is just so much more exhausting because you're constantly going around, and we had to go upwind very far out against steep chop, and with a speedboard this is very hard. I just finished stickering the 5.0 because today looks like the strongest day of the World Speeds, and I'm going to take you along for this day and show you what it's all about and what we're doing here. And yeah, the last days I sailed the 5.4, but I think today the wind is the strongest that it's been this week, so I'm going to need the 5.0 I think. It's my Luderitz sail, so it's quite old already, but I've tuned it perfectly and I know it works, so I'm going to use that sail instead of a new one today that I haven't tested yet. And yeah, just put the event stickers on, the sail number and everything, so we're good to go. Skipper's meeting is at 10, and yeah, hopefully we can do good. So right now I'm in 16th position. There's a lot of Germans here that I'm fighting with. I think I'm from the Germans in 2nd position, behind Andy Laufer at the moment. But yeah, I'm gonna have some breakfast and then I'll take you along on the beach. See you there. Alright guys, skippers meeting. They planned to start foil first, but the wind just properly kicked in and I think they were gonna cancel the foil and start straight on fin. I only rigged the 5.0 over there because I think it's gonna be properly windy. And yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of gear here on the beach and everyone is preparing. We should have a fun day. We should have someone on the beach to film. So this should be pretty exciting. Sand is flying, the strongest day. Let's go and push.
So we ended up doing 2 heats that day. The first heat was actually extended by 15 minutes to 1 hour and 15 minutes. Then we had a little lunch break, and the last heat of the day got extended by 45 minutes to 1 hour and 45 minutes as the conditions throughout the heat just kept turning better and better and better. In the women's, the battle for the world champion title was on between Heidi Ulrich, the defending world champion, and Jenna Gibson coming over from the Slalom World Tour. It was Jenna's first competition on speed, and she actually managed to improve her speed in every heat of the competition, while Heidi Ulrich, the defending champion, with not much training on the speedboard this year, showed why she is the current world record holder in the women's and the reigning world champion. In the end, Jenna actually managed to win the last 2 heats on the last day, but with Heidi's first 3 wins on the first days of competition, it was just enough for her to take the women's world champion title for the 2nd time in a row. Melek Toraman completed the podium, finishing 3rd with a solid performance as well. It was really cool to also see a proper girls battle this year with very close heats, and I hope that more girls will join the speed surfing events in the future, because currently there's not so many women doing speed surfing. In the men's, the battle for the world speed champion title was actually even more intense. The defending champion, the legend Antoine Albo, managed to actually win the first heat of the event on day 1, leading the competition heading into day 2. So it really looked like he would defend his world speed champion title for another year. But day 2 actually really shook up the ranking in the men's, with both Hans Kreisel and Vincent Falkener managing to win 1 heat each, with Antoine actually having a shocker in the 3rd heat of the event with only finishing 7th in this heat. So he really needed the discard coming into play again for his chances for the world champion title. So with the discard coming into play on this day, it was actually really exciting, because 4 people had a chance of winning this world champion title. Antoine Albo, Vincent Falkener, Hans Kreisel and Matteo Iachino with an outside chance. And today Matteo Iachino actually managed to put his name even more firmly in the race for the world champion title by managing to win the first heat of today. And I saw him flying down the course as I was walking up today, and he just looked so solid and locked into position where nothing is moving. The sail wasn't moving, the board wasn't moving much, and that's usually a sign that you're very in tune with your equipment. So it was pretty cool to see him flying past and winning this first heat of the day, and obviously making the title race even more exciting. One thing that I have to mention is that this year we had very big changes in conditions throughout the whole heats. We had a lot of cloud, and this is known in south of France as black tramontana. Yeah, because obviously the sun is covered by the clouds. And this wind, when the clouds are there, can be very strong, but is super gusty and shifty compared to when the skies are just sunny. And this meant that throughout the heats, we actually had like changes of wind strength of about 25 knots. At one moment is blowing 50 knots, at the other it was actually like maybe 20 knots or even less. And on top of that, also the angle of the wind changed a lot. So this meant that you had to really pick your moment carefully and also be a little bit lucky with catching the perfect gust on the course that is coming strong, but also with the right direction. Because if it's too square, you will not go as fast, and if it's too broad, it creates chop. And I think this year, this was very important if you wanted to win, to read the gusts and the wind well and choose the right moment. And yeah, in the last heat of the event, like I said before, the conditions actually turned better and better and better towards the end. And after 1.5 hours, the heat was still running. And there was this time window of just 10 minutes where there was like the perfect gust that was coming from the perfect direction, where it was really broad but not choppy yet. And also the gust had a strength of about probably 45 to 50 knots. And you really had to be in this gust in order to win the heat. And the first one who was on this gust was Hans Kreisel. He clocked in the fastest run of his competition with a 45.18 knot run. And only seconds later, I was actually down at the end of the course, so I was seeing all the runs in this gust. And yeah, the second one, only seconds after Hans, was Matteo Iachino, and he went even a little bit faster in this gust with a run of 45.43 knots, and I believe that is also his personal best on speed surfing. So pretty cool that the conditions were so good that people managed to beat their personal best in competition, which is quite rare. But then the last one in the gust was Vincent Falkener, and he clocked in the fastest run of the whole event with 46.32 knots. And by doing this in like the last minutes or even seconds of the heat with this run, he managed to win the heat and the whole competition and gained his first world champion title, which obviously is like super exciting that it all came down to like the last minutes and seconds of the last heat of the day in order to determine who is world champion. So in the end, Hans Kreisel took second and Antoine Albo took third, but yeah, it was really cool to see these super close battles between the top guys play out. So big congratulations again to Vincent Falkenaar as well as Heidi Ulrich for their respective world champion titles. I'm actually myself super happy that they won because I lived with them for 4 weeks when I was in Lüderitz in 2022 and became really good friends with both of them. So I'm really happy that they both managed to share the podium together and both get their world champion title, Vincent for the first time and Heidi actually for the second time. But how did it go for me on the last day of competition? The first heat of the day, it actually started really bad for me because the wind was blowing with 50 knots, so I rigged the 5.0, and in the first 20 minutes of the heat there was actually some good wind, but it was super gusty, like I said, and I felt like all the time I managed to catch a gust in the beginning of the run for maybe 200 meters or so, maybe 250, get a good speed of like 42 knots over 250 meter, but then every single time I would just hit like a lull where there's like a vacuum and absolutely no wind. I guess everyone felt like this, so it's fair play. But I really didn't manage to keep the speed throughout the lulls, and I only made like 38 knot runs in this, even though there were 50 knots of wind, and I was actually slower than the previous day where there was less wind. And yeah, like I said, the conditions changed a lot, so after 20 minutes from being before very broad and 50 knots, it turned down a little bit to 30 knots and it got super square. And square conditions actually really benefit the taller and heavier guys because the longer leverage just seems to really help on a square course, and you can really push the gear and let it fly. And if you're like a little bit shorter like me, it's actually much more difficult to make the gear fly in square conditions. So whereas the big and tall guys were doing like 42 knots at the end of this heat in the square conditions, I only managed to do like 38s, and I was really struggling to keep the gear flying throughout this first heat. So that was a little bit frustrating to start off the day. The second heat, I actually felt a little bit more in tune with the conditions and my gear, but by this point I had another problem coming up. Everyone was running on their last energy reserves after 3 days of full-on competition in up to 50 knots. And I actually had a big problem that my legs were completely chafed by walking in the wetsuit all the kilometers back up on the run, and my legs were actually bleeding while I was walking up with my gear the beach every time. So I was like thinking, maybe I should just quit, and I have like 38, 39 knot runs. But in the end, I managed to complete the heat, even though it was 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I could kind of blend out the pain while surfing down the course and just focus on the run. But I think it still might have affected my performance a little bit. And I actually managed to put in like 39 and 40 knot runs in the second heat, so it was for sure a little bit better than my first heat. But by missing out on this super good gust at the end of the heat that I told you about, where Vincent managed to go 46 knots, I was kind of losing out a little bit to the guys who were in this gust. So this heat again I finished in 20th place. Overall, I lost 1 place on that last day, going from 16th to 17th in the overall and finishing as 3rd German during the competition. So it's still a decent result. I'm not super happy, I'm not super sad with the result. I know I can do better, and actually just reviewing all this footage now from the event, I can already see like a lot of points where I can improve my stance and maybe go a little bit faster next time. Let me know if you would like to see a video like this, because I think it would be pretty cool if I went over my speed stance and let you guys know where I could do better and what I could improve to go faster and faster. Yeah, that's it guys. If you enjoyed this coverage of the event, please consider subscribing to the channel, because I'm really trying to get to 10,000 subscribers this year, and subscribing would really help me out to reach this goal. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.